Welcome to the Coffee Conversation and Wake Up South Africa. My name is Dean Hastick, and I'm just a guy who gives a damn.
Greetings. It's Aphiwe here, the other side of the story. Dean.
Yes.
One question. I know there are many things that you can say you hate about black people, but I want to ask you one thing. One thing that you don't like, disgusts you about black people. Be it in their behavior or whatever.
Firstly, there aren't many things I dislike about black people. There aren't many or hundreds of things, certainly. I would have preferred it if you asked me what I like about black people first, not dislike. What do I hate?
What do you hate?
Okay. The aspect of dealing with black people that frustrates me is the expectation that I need to deliver something which I don't even have. That there's this expectation that because I'm white, I have something to offer them, which I do believe that as a white person, I do have something to offer. But what is often asked of me, I don't have. And that is resources, that is to share, that is to give to. When I go to a restaurant, me and you will sit there. I will always get the bill. When we go to the car, I will always get the bill, even if I don't have the money. When we go to a car, the beggars will come to me and expect that I have something for them, and it frustrates me. Aspects of what I don't like about black people.
Are you saying beggars are black?
Most of the beggars are black. Well, most of the people in the country who are poor are black. There are a lot more white people now. I mean, we can get into that and say that whites aren't doing as well. But the fact of the matter is that most of the poor people in South Africa are black. Most of the people in South Africa are black. I think it's only 7.5% of the population is white. And most of those white people are not in poverty, where you've got 85% or 75% of black, then there's Indians and coloreds. Out of those 75 to 80% of black people, many of them are in poverty. It's not like 1% of the whites or 2% of the whites.
But what do you hate?
What do I hate? No, sorry, you took me there. Okay. What do I hate? Hate.
Or what do you dislike? Let me tone this down maybe. You don't have hatred. But what do you dislike?
When black people have a mentality that I owe them something which I don't owe them. There is stuff I do owe them. But when I owe them something that I don't owe them, that upsets me. And where I find it is mostly in the people who weren't even in the apartheid system. They weren't even alive in the apartheid system. The guys that I know through the years who walked through journeys of discomfort and segregation and stuff, who came through apartheid and are dealing with the older fellows, the guys who are 45, 50, they've got a lot more tolerance than the younger people. The younger people I find militant. And there's never an opportunity, not never, with those types of people, there's never an opportunity to find common ground. What they want to do is continuously find dominance all the time, and they want to crush, they want to break. And I think it's destructive to them, I think it's destructive to the country, and I think it's certainly destructive to the white people and what we need to do in South Africa. It's very, very frustrating in trying to deal with people who don't want to get things better. They don't want to make things better. They just want to destroy what they hate.
If you were black, have you ever imagined what your life would have been like? If you were a black person, if you were not white, the things that you've managed to enjoy, the things that you've had over time in your life, the places you've been, do you think you would have gone there if you were not white?
Let's deal with the one question there. The first question was, have I imagined my life being black? If I was a black person, there were a few things that I would hope for. Number one is that I would have a mom and a dad, because so many black people don't. They say that today 67 babies born every day out of every 100. 67 out of every 100 born daily don't even have a father written on the birth certificate. That's of all the populations in South Africa. Now, that's not just a black thing. That also happens with some of the white people, some of the Indians, some of the coloreds and the blacks. But it's more prolific in the non-white communities than it is in the white communities, culturally. And when I say culture, I don't mean historically culturally. I mean that's what we were afforded to be able to do because the system didn't impose on us to have to work away from our families. And that's a legacy of what happened. So the first thing, being a black person, I would hope that I would have a mom and a dad. I lost my dad a few years ago. Now, I lost my dad when I was I don't know, doesn't matter. About 12 years ago, I was in my 40s, I think. No, 30s. I was in my late 30s. And you would think that the role of a father was done. I still have many, many moments where I go, I wish I could just go to my dad. Because I need that figure, someone who can understand me as a son, someone who I can learn from as a son to try and guide me through what I'm going through now. So if I was black, I would want to have a mom and a dad, and preferably that they don't beat the crap out of me. Because that's another issue that does happen in the poorer communities, is that sometimes the father is absent, even though he is a father.
But we're talking about you now. I want to focus on you.
Yeah, sorry. I digress. The second thing that I would hope is that in working it together, that we would be able to, as a stronger unit as a family, give me a better platform to try and grow in my education, etc. Now, that not being the case, my life would be devastating. I would be a criminal. I had some abuse as a white person when I was younger. I had quite a lot of abuse contracted. Sorry?
There's something here in what you are saying that is, or maybe that I need to, black people who have it hard, it's not only those who don't have parents.
Sure.
Just for your information. It's
No,
not,
I understand.
There are blacks who have parents, and even their parents are struggling, and their kids obviously then will struggle. And so let's look at a perfect situation here, because there are mothers and fathers who are struggling and they bring children to this world. Not that they will be absent so that their children turn bad. So I'm asking you now, in a situation that you've been, like you've had a perfect father, you've had a perfect mother. If you were black,
no such thing as perfect father, perfect mother. And just to go back to the other point, is that statistically, most of the people who come from single-parent families do suffer more than two-parent families. Even though it might be slightly less suffering, or slightly more suffering, and these guys have slightly less, that is statistically. So that's why I said that. I would prefer to have two parents at home than one.
Okay.
Because who's going to protect me from the guy next door, etc.? Who's going to protect her? So for those things. But let's assume that I don't have those things. As most black people, 67 babies out of every 100 born don't even have a father written on the birth certificate. That's most. That's more than half. And that's tragic. So let's assume I'm in that environment. I would be looking for relevance amongst the other men. I would be relating to the ones that could give me significance and relevance, and most of the time that manifests in violence. That violence then escalates, and I would become a criminal. Going through COVID-19 at the moment, and the event of COVID-19, because the virus doesn't do anything. It's the response, well, the virus does what the virus does, but the response to the measures is what's causing the livelihoods. People's lives are being destroyed, the livelihoods being destroyed, ours included. I've already started thinking maybe I should bootleg. That's a criminal act, and I haven't done it, just so that you know, but I've already thought, how am I going to make money? And I've already started thinking, with all the privilege that I have enjoyed, the two-parent family, I've already started thinking, how can I buck the system just so that I can survive? If I was grown up as a black person, I might be one of the worst. I might be one of the gang leaders. I might be heading up the syndicates to steal the cars, go hijack the people, bring me the cars. I'll give you $2,000 and sell it for $40,000, and I'll just be okay and lord the power over everybody underneath me.
But just for the record, there are black people who are poor and honorable. 100%. There are black people who actually don't have food and they don't have means. They live from odd means, and yet they're honorable. Just because you are poor and black, it doesn't mean that you default to being a criminal. There are morals 100%. That guards black people. So my question was, how would your life have been? Would you have been where you've been?
No.
If you were not white?
No. Unless there was an intervention of some or other sort to assist me through. I'm saying that I know that there are a lot of, I've met them. The guys that I've worked with, they're amazing people. So every now and then you get the odd schmuck who, I would,
amazing
what I'm
people.
saying, yeah, amazing people.
I want to ask you a question. I want to take you out of your hot pot now.
I know, I like it. It's nice. I'm like a stew, I'm cooking.
So if now you talk about amazing, what is it that you like and even love about black people?
I'm glad you asked that now, because I don't want it to sound like I assume that just because people have had a hard time that they are bound to be criminal. My point that I was making there is that my personality, I would probably be one of the worst of the worst.
Taken.
But I see such beauty in the people, the language. I say, how are you? You say, who are you? It's so much deeper. When I say, how are you as a European, I'm kind of hoping you don't tell me, because I don't really have time to listen. But when you ask who I am, or not when you ask who I am, but when you ask each other who you are because you understand what you're asking it, you reveal it. And there's a story. One of the disadvantages of having an alphabet is that you lose the stories. Because now they get putting into writing, and then you only get to hear about them when you actually read them. And for many hundreds of years, we couldn't even read anyway. But there's this richness in the culture of the black people that you see in the language. You speak in terms of, I see you. Hello, we say hello. What the hell does hello mean? It's like very, very shallow. And I love, even though I don't know a lot of the language, in the tiny bit that I do know, I can see that there's a depth and a richness that we lose.
That's why the term Ubuntu went viral.
Yeah, and I think it was almost butchered because the essence of the word was in some ways lost, but we won't go. The other things that I like is I love the fact that I've seen people come from really, really difficult situations. And we would get depressed, and we would commit suicide and all sorts of stuff. And you just see this black guy and this black woman, and they're just cruising. They have...
Black don't crack.
Black don't crack. There's a hardiness to them that you go, geez, like there's courage there. And somehow, even in the midst of all of this misery, yes, you've got those, the hateful few, I call them, but you've got this whole group over here. And that's why I think I'm encouraged to do what we're doing, because I sincerely believe that most of us in South Africa, black, white, Indian, colored, and even the Chinese that are arriving, hopefully them too, actually want to get on. We actually want to try and make things better. We actually want to improve this country together, because in most of the conversations that I've had, that's what manifests. There's a transparency and an honesty and a humility that isn't a self-degrading humility only, although that sometimes manifests as well. There's a humility for them to go, oh, you know what, some justice has been found here, there's some respect has been shown, and they respond to it, where the whites might show that they're not interested. 26 years later, the blacks are only starting to say that they're not interested because we haven't engaged. That's beautiful. The voices. We went to Ulundi, little Zulu school in Ulundi, and these kids, and they came out and they could just sing. It's just built in that they've got musicality and musicality in them that is just so naturally brought there. And that's like the essence of the human that's coming out. That, I mean, have you ever seen most white people dance? I think I must have some black in me, because I've got a bit of rhythm at least. My friends, some of them are just clompers. And the ability to even be able to express yourself in the movement and the dance just shows the richness and the depth of the value of the individuals and the culture that it comes from. And there's many things that I love. I love the warmth when you get to know somebody, especially the ladies. I always talk about the ladies who helped me grow up. There were two.
You love black ladies?
Yeah, no, I love black people. I dislike a lot of them, and a lot of them dislike me. But most of them, I think, if I engage, if I go, and I've done this many times, if I go up to them, and I say, listen, and I hit them with a hard question. Do you hate me because I'm white? And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I go, listen, I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just want to stay. If you hate me, say it freely, because I don't hate you because you're not white. What I want to do is talk. And they go, okay, that's the thing. And they engage. Most of the people just engage. And at the end of it, we end up hugging. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we laugh. Sometimes we take each other's numbers. I mean, I've got probably about 40 or 50 numbers in my phone of people that I've spoken to. And every now and then I send them a message, or they said something. And that's beautiful. I love that about the black people. I love the black people will get up early in the morning and they will walk all the way, and there's time and there's patience. And we talk about African time and how it isn't useful in some areas. But in other areas, it's perfect. The notion that you can go, well, the sun is up at that time. So that's a qualification of that framework of the day. We'll meet sometime then. And then if you arrive at all, well, you're not late because you're just lucky to have got there. And there's an understanding of those things. With all the limitations, there's a beauty behind it, of the culture. The fact that you still respect your elders. We don't respect our elders. We don't necessarily disrespect them, but we do disregard them primarily. And I'm making it a blanket statement. It's not always the case. But I often say that in the European communities, our orphans are in the old age homes, where we care for our children, we don't look after our old, where you look after your old.
Okay. So, Dean, another question again. In your mind, what do you think would help us as a people in South Africa to actually relate better? What do you think? What is it that you can hope for from black people that they would do or stop doing in order? And what is it that you know you have to do or stop doing in order?
Okay, very good question. I think firstly, black people can realize that Africa has always offered a tremendous amount. This lie that Africans and Africa have never contributed or never created or never conquered or never offered anything, even technologically, it's an absolute lie. If you have a look at, and it comes through from the European dialect, and I don't want to go where it comes through. There's many places that it comes from. But the fact of the matter is that from a religious center, Africa was far advanced compared to Europe. Far advanced. The Queen of Ethiopia, the prophets that came down into Africa, the stories with Solomon, the fact that you can see aspects of the biblical manifestation of how families operate and stuff. You see it more in the African culture than you see it in the European culture, and it's written right there in Scripture. These age-old stories that are not old because they're old-fashioned, but they're old because they're timeless. Many of those things still exist in South Africa, with all the limitations as well. So there's benefits and it is, because it's not the system that's the problem, it's the people who run the system.
But what are practical ways of interaction?
Okay, recognizing that Africa has a lot to offer. Africans have a lot to offer. If we can learn from you, the white people can learn from the African people how you hold on to your stories, how your word is your bond within your communities, how you revere your old people, how you have an ethic and structures that we can actually benefit from. And then but primarily the black people need to realize that they have so much to offer. There is a talent pool amongst the black people and the cultures and the colored people and the Indian people and the people of South Africa who are non-white. There is a talent pool of gifts and resources, not just by capability and the ability to make money, but the essence of cultures that has benefit. And the black people can realize that there is something to offer. Okay. And the white people can realize that. And then the black people can also realize, but the white people also have something to offer. If we can see each other as valuable, not just as...
That's what black people have to do, and non-white people, coloreds, Indians. That's what they have to do. Realize that they have greatness within them also that they can bring to the table. What is it that white people then can do?
Realize that we also do. We also do. And it's not just for us. It's something that I think most white people actually want to share. There just isn't a platform to share. I think if we can learn from the black people and say, okay, you don't neglect your old people. You also go to them for advice. Let's adopt some of that. Teach us how to do it. Give us some of the protocols, how to engage as a family. Because our families, although the nucleus of the family is much closer than the black people, the peripheral family is very distant. Very distant in much of the white community. You go to school. Now you get born. Now you go to nursery school. You get sent to nursery school, sent to primary school, sent to high school, sent to university, get the hell out of home. And then we wonder as old people, oh, but no, you don't care for me while I'm old. Well, you told me my whole life to go and stand on my own 2 feet. Now you want me to come and look after you. That just doesn't gel. So you got Australia and New Zealand and America and Europe and all these different places where the white people live, but the core of their family is here and they never come home. Now, there's advantages in the core of the family.
Now, that's white problems now. I'm talking about how they can...
No, but the core of the family is something that we can offer. And we can say, why don't we learn from each other? Your value of the bigger picture of the family and the community, teach us that. And we can offer what we know about how we deal with the core and combine the two so that the community, even of the family and then extended, can grow stronger. Instead of you having one positive attribute, we've got another, but we don't have yours and you don't have ours, and because of that, we're both suffering.
So what I'm talking about, Dean, here is a practical, applicable way in which both can do to actually get along. Not the ideal lessons that we can give to each other, but practical ways of engagement. What would it take,
See each
especially
other.
from white people?
We need to see each other as human first.
Who
That's
does? Okay, carry on.
That's a value system that's being lost in the Western culture. What we're doing is we're moving to group identities. So you're a black. So that's your main identity. Not you are a Aphiwe, the man, etc. And the story of you that you tell when you introduce yourself, that's not relevant anymore. You are merely significant in the group dynamic that you participate in. I'm merely significant in the group dynamic of what we participate in. Let's go back to no, that's a Aphiwe. Yes, he belongs to a group. That's a secondary thing or a tertiary thing. But the primary focus is that a Aphiwe is a man. And he's a human. And let me engage with him on those terms first. And Dean's a man and a human. Let's engage with Dean on those terms first. And let's see where it leads from there. Then we can go, okay, and he's part of the black community, but not just the black, he's also Xhosa, and he's not just Xhosa, he's from that part of the Cape. And not just that, he also comes from a village primarily initially, and then he's also got that education.
Is that all something that you think a white person has to identify and even go through in noting?
Over time, we can do that. That's part of the growth of the relationship. But the primary foundation of the relationship should be somebody else sitting on the other side of the table is just a human. As good and as bad potentially as anybody else. They could be a Nelson Mandela. They could be an Adolf Hitler. They could be a white Nelson Mandela or a black Adolf Hitler. That evil capacity is available to all of us. And that great capacity is available to all of us. That's the fragility of the human condition. Let's treat each other as human. And it's not a case of let me respect you, but let me show you respect. How do I respect you? How do you respect me unless I've honored you, unless I've considered you? But to show respect and to open the door and say human primarily, I think is the starting point for us to go. We can do that in companies. We can do that in restaurants. How many times will a person walk in and go, oh, black person serving me? Okay, doesn't happen often, but when it happens, you go, they're not seeing them as human. Or how many times does even a white waiter come, but we don't see them as a human, we see them as a waiter. And we go, they're just here to serve me. They're not a human, they're a servant.
You know what?
Humans.
One of the things that can contribute in closing that gap is when you are on the grocery store, on the queue. There's a black lady or black somebody or next, just greet. Because what sometimes happens is that you sense this person is very annoyed. You know, you can sense that this person is very uncomfortable to be in this space. You know you are safe. It's a grocery store. There is securities. There is cameras and everything. Nobody will do you any harm. The best thing you can do is be yourself and be polite. Just be a human in that space. Remember that the person who's next to you can't even pick a candy in this shop and eat without being followed by security, but you can. You know, that sensitivity would take us a long way. Great smile, understand, it's just a human. Nobody to harm you. It's not a criminal now here. It's a shopper. You know, those would close the gaps.
And on both sides. Just
on both sides.
To see each other as humans primarily. Yeah.
Yeah, let's leave it at that.
Okay.
This is Aphiwe, the other side of the story.
And my name is Dean Hastick, and I'm just a guy who gives a damn.